One here, looks like. Cool. Okay. So the video for today, there's a lot of humor in it. So the last group really enjoyed it. I will warn you, he talks very fast. So I said I would try to avoid these, but I thought this was a good video. So if it really becomes too much of a challenge, you can just type in the chat to let me know, because I have the option to slow down the video a little bit with YouTube, but it does affect the audio quality. It sounds a little weird when it's slower. So we'll try this at full speed, and I'll have the subtitles on. There's a couple things I'll mention. Actually, I'm going to share, because this, with the last group, I explained it afterwards and they understood the jokes better then. So I'm going to share this ahead of time to try to give you a better understanding of a couple of things before we start. And this is going to seem silly maybe, but it will improve your understanding of what he's talking about, I think. So let me just share my browser real quickly. So there's a few things he talks about in the beginning which are related to playing as a child. So if you're not familiar, this was very big in the United States in the 1980s. My Little Ponies were these, it was a cartoon, and they also made dolls, like toys with these. So this was very, very common for mostly young girls to play with. And then about the same time for the boys more often were these GI Joes, which were like military toys. So he talks about playing with his sister with some of these. And so this will give you a little bit better understanding of what he's talking about when that comes up. So let me go ahead, I'll switch to the video. One moment. I'll make this full screen. Oh, you know what? I'm not sure if I. Okay, let me stop sharing 1 second to share again. I think I need to check to make sure the audio is set up. Yep, there. Okay, should be good now.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed I had put out all my GI Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's Milos and ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story. Which is, my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side, and somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, suddenly Amy disappeared off of the top of the bunk bed and landed with us crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister, and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's face this wail of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter's nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now that was cheating, because there's nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy the hurt 5-year-old little sister, but Amy the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past, and you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict. As her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn. With one broken leg. What we stumbled across at this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time, was something that was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back studying you here in the room, I would be thrilled, because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things that we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how, in a statistically valid way, do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential, or for happiness, or productivity, or energy, or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like, how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom? Scientists change the answer to, how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom? And then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled, because that means you're either depressed, or you have a disorder, or hopefully both. We're hoping for both, because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is to make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit, and what positive psychology posits, is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. That instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says, why? Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor? Whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is study you. Because maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide. The reason this graph is important to me is when I turn on the news, it seems like the majority of the information is not positive. In fact, it's negative. Most of it's about murder, corruption, diseases, natural disasters, and very quickly, my brain starts to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. What that's doing is creating something called the medical school syndrome, which if you know people who have been to medical school during the first year of medical training, as you read through a list of all the symptoms and diseases that could happen, suddenly you realize you have all of them. I have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is another story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, Sean, I have leprosy. Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later that allowed me to go, suddenly something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to. Wasn't that guy. But what happened, I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years, and what I found in my research and my teaching is that these students, no matter how happy they were with their original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up, I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, this freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about? Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels, when in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, we already know that. So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just know that's not a wellness week, that's a sickness week. What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stressed, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is to reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has 2 functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We've found that there are ways that you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain that your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, and allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities and by training your brain, just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success, and in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
So I, I know he spoke very fast. Were you able to follow along pretty well?
Yeah.
Yes, no?
Yeah, it's follow about
Okay,
80%. Yeah.
that's pretty good. There was also some medical words, psychology words, so some of that might have been a little difficult as well. Not important, so I haven't put those on the vocabulary list, but yeah, I understand if some of it was a little difficult. Let me go ahead and open up the vocabulary.
Yep.
All right, so let me share this with you. I guess before we start on these, were there any other just general questions or comments about the video?
Oh, sorry, I have a word. The speaker said that his brother-in-law has some disease.
So first, so he mentioned 2. One was leprosy, and the second one he mentioned isn't really a disease, menopause. So leprosy is a disease that hasn't really been around in the world very much for hundreds of years. And it was something, actually, let me look up, I don't remember exactly what it is. So it's a disease that affects the skin and nerves. And let's see, caused by a bacteria. So yeah, it's a bacterial disease, but it would cause very serious skin and nerve damage. So people would have trouble walking, they would become deformed. So it was very serious, but hundreds of years ago, they did not have treatment for this. Nowadays, since it's just a bacteria, it's very easy to treat. So it was, the joke was because it's so rare for someone to read a list of symptoms and suddenly think they have leprosy is kind of ridiculous. The second one was menopause, which is, this is specific to females. It is later in life when you're not producing eggs anymore. So the joke there was that this is a disease that only women, it's not a disease, it's not even a disease, I shouldn't say that. It's a stage in life that women experience later on. And so he is talking about his brother-in-law, who's probably in his 30s, he's a male, and now he thinks he had menopause the week before. So of course, it's just another joke.
I see, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Were there any other questions? We can add more words also after we go through this list if there's something else that you noticed. But if there was anything that was causing trouble understanding the video, feel free to mention it now, or we can come back to that. All right, so I guess starting with the word list, erupt is the first word that I wrote down. Can anyone offer a definition or maybe some guesses as to what that means?
Something that bursts.
Yeah. So erupt, burst would be a very good synonym, a word with the same meaning for that. Often, if we would talk about a volcano erupting when when there's kind of explosions of gas and lava. You can also talk about a person erupting with emotion. If they are very angry, they might erupt, and it is suddenly lots of screaming, and so it can be like a sudden outburst or outpouring of some sort. And usually, it is thought to be a little bit violent. It is kind of a intense event. How about tragedy?
Something terrible.
Yeah, like an unpleasant event.
Oh, God.
Any other thoughts for tragedy? That is pretty much it. Yeah. So if something is tragic, it is unpleasant, distressful, something along those lines. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And this, just to make sure it was understood, but unicorn, are you familiar with that?
Horse only have one horn.
Right. So it is not thought to be real. So it is like a mythical or invented creature that's like a horse and has one horn. There is one other way this term gets used today, often in business, and it's often used with startup companies. So a unicorn can also just be a description for something great but rare. So if like with startup companies, if they get valued at over $1 billion in like their first year or two, they're often referred to as a unicorn. They're very rare businesses that grow very quickly to extreme heights. And so like Uber would be a unicorn. Some of these companies like that just kind of explode very quickly. It's not, of course, the way he used it. And in general, yes, the unicorn is the rare horse with the one horn. But it is used in this other way sometimes. More recently, it started to become part of the vocabulary in that sense. How about devote?
To give something.
Yeah, to give. Any other words we could use?
To do one's best to do something.
Okay. So you're kind of giving your all in that sense. Dedicate would be another word. Do you know this word?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, to give, dedicate, yeah, I guess that's pretty good. So in the video, he was talking about devoting resources. And so that means his sister was giving her energy to that, to imagining she was a unicorn. How about stumbled?
Is it job?
Sorry?
Somebody job?
So it can be used in a couple of ways, not necessarily relating specifically to a job though. And there are kind of two ways this can be used. So there is like a physical definition, and then it can also be used in more of like a metaphorical sense.
The stumbled is mean that a person when walking or trip over. Oh yeah, trip over the word.
Right. So stumble, if you stumble, you trip. Like as you're walking, if you stumble over something, you trip on it, or maybe you just lose your footing a little bit. If it's used in more of a general sense with other contexts, you can say it's basically just a falter, or I don't know if falter is familiar to you, but to kind of lose ground, that's an idiom, to hit an obstacle on a path. So this could be maybe on a journey along a process, maybe at a business. So maybe this could be your career path. If you say you stumbled in your career path, maybe it means you thought you were going to get a new, better job, but something happened and you did not. And so you might say that you stumbled a little bit. Or you're working on a project and there's a point where you stumble in the project. It could be you hit a big challenge that has set you back a little bit. So yes, in the physical sense, it is when you are walking and you trip, but you can also use it to describe a setback or obstacle in some kind of journey through whatever, education, business, your life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. How about Vanguard?
Like a pioneer.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
So Vanguard, yeah, pioneer or like leading innovation, mostly the same thing as pioneer, yeah. So the Vanguard could be used either as like a point with something. I think in the video he made it more as like a point in time, like the vanguard of something happening. So it can refer to like a group of people that is leading this innovation, or it can refer to like the innovation itself. What about thrilled?
Excited.
Good. Yep. Excited. And how about posit? This was used as a verb, I believe, in the video, and is more often used as a verb, but it can also be a noun. But maybe we can start with the verb, how it would be defined. There's a word that looks like this, that looks like posit, which can also almost be used to define it. It's a little hint.
Fix.
Nope. Any other thoughts?
To have or
Sorry?
have
To
or
have.
to have something.
Okay. No, a little bit different than that. So deposit is like to put forth. But what I was thinking of is pose. So if you pose a question, right, it means you are kind of putting it in front of someone. Posit, posit usually works alongside like an idea or theory of some sort. So if you posit something, you are suggesting a new idea usually. It can also be used as a noun, but I think it's much more rare that you would hear this. A posit would be a suggestion or an idea, like a new idea. But normally you use it as something you are doing. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
How about glean?
Like collect.
Connect?
Collect.
Oh, collect? Yeah, good. So yeah, glean is kind of like to collect. So he was talking about gleaning information from a set of data. So it usually means you are getting, it is getting something. Oftentimes it is referred to in the sense of getting knowledge from like some complicated set of information. How about embedded?
Is it inside?
Yeah. So to be kind of like fixed inside, I'll say something else because usually means taking something and putting it within a different type of organization or of some sort. So like if you, well, the example I used the other day, if like with developer teams, oftentimes if you have a like a web developer and a company wants to use someone, they will go to a company that does web development and embed that person in their team to work alongside to do the project. So yeah, it can be a person, it can be a thing, but yes, when something is put inside something else, and it stays there for a while. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. How about prestigious?
Is it famous?
Mm-hmm. So famous, I would also add well respected, right? Like it has a good connotation to it. It's, I guess, famous, not infamous, but yes. So like Harvard is a prestigious school, right? It's well known and also well respected. It has a good reputation. And I'm going to add one, frantic. Anyone guess the meaning of frantic?
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy is a good way to describe it, or chaotic. So frantic is just when everything is kind of a mess and it's a bit crazy and unorganized and a lot of things may be happening at one time. Good. All right. So any other words that you wrote down or remember from the video that were difficult?
Oh,
No, nothing?
no.
No.
All right, good. Well, that was not so bad then. Excuse me. Okay, so what did you think of the video in general? It seemed like it was enjoyable for most of you, at least. Any thoughts? I have a couple of discussion questions we can use, but did anyone have any thoughts or comments that they wanted to share? Anyone? No? Cindy, what were you saying?
I no, I said nothing. I murmur.
Okay. All right, so I guess for discussion, what I had written down for us to do is maybe thinking about a time, so maybe one negative and one positive, but a time from anything in your life you'd like to share that you know that your attitude or your feelings maybe had either a good impact on something else that you were doing, or maybe a negative impact on something else that you were doing. So an example, maybe you're really tired and you're not feeling very good, and so you don't do so well at work. That would be a very simple example. But this could be anything from your life. So maybe we'll start with a negative example, and then we can do a positive example. So can you think of a time when you were feeling upset or stressed or unhappy about something, and it had an effect on something else in your life?
I can share first.
Okay, thanks, Cindy.
I think if I feel stressed on study, I won't have a good grade. But if
Okay.
I think study is a good thing to make me become more smart, become smarter, I will have a better grade, I think.
Yeah, good. Stop and share. Who else has something they can share? Chris, do you have anything?
I I'm not ready.
There's got to be something. I mean, it doesn't have to be too complicated, but just the time when, an example of a time maybe you weren't feeling so good, and you know that it caused some trouble or something, or a
Uh,
difficulty.
uh, maybe you can ask James first.
Okay,
But
we'll come back to Chris.
I'll be
Chris
first.
is putting you on the spot, James.
It's putting my own style. All right, it's all right. In my last year of the university days, I need to have the work and both the working stuff, which the last year I'm actually on internship.
Okay.
So I have to both work on the working stuff that my boss giving me and the studying stuff that the school days that they give to me. So it's kind of stress and kind of taking a lot of work for on the both side.
Sure.
So eventually, because of the stress, I couldn't actually do good at both the grades and some of the assignment that my boss given to me. So I think that still you need to have some space and maybe some time for yourself.
Great, good example. Thank you. Should we go back to Chris, or we can go to?
Yeah, just go back to Chris.
Yeah. All right, Chris, it's your turn.
I don't have a concrete example about influence on my way of doing something, but I think if I'm unhappy and if I can sleep well and eating well, everything I have done is not. I mean, it's just it's bad. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
No,
hard to describe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think
understand.
if I'm unhappy, everything is terrible.
Yeah. It
I
definitely
can't do
makes
anything.
everything more difficult. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Peter and Lily.
I can
Had
share.
some time to think now.
I can share experience. Maybe in 2019, and the stock is very good, and I and my wife buy some stock, and we earn some money, and the family relationship is very good, and
Okay.
she will cook the dinner for me and very respect me. But when the time go to 2020, the stock is very bad, and we begin losing money, and the profit is become negative. And at that time, my wife never cooked the dinner for me, and we often go to the restaurant and buy some McDonald's or other food and take away.
Sure.
So
yeah, it made things more difficult at home. Okay, good. Lily?
I don't have much experience to share, but I agree with Chris that if I feel negative, I will don't. I mean, I don't want to do anything. Just yeah, just let me
Yeah.
alone like this. Yeah, but if
I
I'm
understand.
happy, things is just the opposite. Yeah. Yes.
Good. I understand. Does anyone have maybe like a specific example or a story for like a positive example of how when you're feeling really good about things that everything seems to go very well then? Cindy, maybe we can go back to you if you have any ideas.
I want to share a word is attraction theorem.
Oh yeah.
It is from a book called Secret. I really
Okay.
believe in this theorem because I think if you have a positive mindset, everybody like human or everything in the world will come to help you to help your dream to come true. So I tried hard to stick to this theorem and use it in my life. Like if if I try to have a what? I try to be happy when I wake up. I think the whole day will become better.
Good. Yeah.
Mm.
Chris, do you have something?
I think if I get a good mood and even the ordinary things will let me very happy, like working or eating, yeah. That's it.
Okay. All right. James?
So I think that with good rest and perhaps having a vacation after a stressful week, that you could actually rethink about the stuff that you actually have worked on, and when you come back, you'll feel like fresh, and you can actually work on the problem more.
Yeah. Good example. Yeah. Lily and Peter?
Sorry. I think I missed something. Oh,
Mm. So we talking about what do we do when we unhappy?
Okay.
Okay.
You can, I mean, you can, well, so this would be, what I was asking is an example of when you're feeling really good, how everything else maybe seems easier or better, if there's an example of that. But I feel free to share any other thoughts you have as well.
Take I have a feeling when my mood is relaxed and when I am happy and I can do some right decision and when I'm an engineer and I can write some good code and when I'm happy and but in a nervous environment and the mood is nervous and I cannot write the good code.
Yeah, I understand. Good, thanks. Lily? Do you have, I know you kind of gave a general answer last time, but maybe in case you've thought of something that would that would be a story you could share for this.
Oh, maybe like this. If I am in a good mood, I'm happy. Even if my trade loses money, my P&L is negative, like yeah, I'm happy as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that yeah. Be like this.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what Peter said previously. I mean, he and his wife's relationship because of the profit. Yeah, actually, sometimes that is what I do for my boyfriend as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. No, just the thing is quite funny.
So it is easier in the relationship when he is having good
Yeah, when
things with
everything
work and
goes smoothly. Yeah, that's the relationship is more relaxed, more yeah, everything is good. Yeah.
And I
Alright.
also found when some people play the poker together, the winner is often more happy. Not more happy. Did you he or she become a winner? I see.
Mhm.
But
you
somebody not
sorry.
unhappy and always sad and nervous, he will lose money.
Okay, that's a good example. I think, yeah. That's I think one of the. I don't know if any of you have watched these poker competitions on television,
Yeah.
but you see that people they will sometimes even try to get their opponents to get upset, right? They will say things to them that might bother them because if they can make them upset, they're more likely to play poorly, right? They might make a mistake. I think you see that in a lot of sports. People try to get inside their opponent's head. Um, Michael Jordan was very famous for in basketball for saying very mean things to the people that he would play against to try to upset them so they would make mistakes.
But sorry, but if you
No.
upset somebody else, that's I don't know that will make you happy. I mean,
No, sorry, go
well,
ahead. I agree, but go ahead.
yeah, I mean, a person tries to make another person upset. I don't think this will make this person happy.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think it is to gain more of an advantage in competition. But what do some of the others think? How do you think that is? Do you think that it helps? Maybe Cindy and Chris, do you think it helps if you are trying to beat an opponent that way by making them feel bad, or do you think it's maybe more important that you are feeling good?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. You
就是他说如果
sorry, you are saying that. Sorry, make somebody happy or what?
No, with what we were just discussing, I was asking if you think it is maybe more important that you feel good to succeed, or if when there is competition, if it is good or if it is to an advantage to try to make somebody else feel worse.
No, I think it's like cheating. Yeah, I think I might want to beat my opponent with the normal way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Makes sense. Cindy, what do you think?
I think because it is a competition, so it must have a winner and a loser. So I think the best result will be we both compete as best as ourselves, and the result is not so important.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, that makes sense. James, what do you think?
I'm not too agree with that, the point of the previous. Yeah. So I think that if you're in a win or lose cases, you want something. So of course you have to have your own attitude and perhaps know that you are confident with in your places, then I think that if you're doing the strategy to win against others, I think that's still in the game, and there's no rules that play against that. So I think that both of them are important.
Okay. So, and they both, do you think, have an impact towards winning then? Or do you think it is maybe one does not matter as much?
I think that both of it will impact with the winning strategy. So, but I think that you could put the first one first, so that you can first have your own confidence, then you can have the strategy to win against others.
Okay, good. And Lily and Peter, we kind of started with you, but then this took a slightly different direction. Do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to add? Anything? We only have a couple of minutes left. These can be your last contributions for today.
I think it depends, and uh, I think if it is a fair competition, and he or she can also do this thing to me. So if the result is not too bad, I think I will do it, because it is you also can do it for me. So I
Sure.
do it first. Yeah.
Okay. Lily, did you have any last thoughts for this?
No.
No? Okay. All right. We only have 1 minute left in the class. So anything before we end for today? Were there any other questions or thoughts that you'd like to share or ask?
Oh, I want to say that James, you think you seems to be thinner than before.
All right. Thanks for the compliment, but I think that I'm actually being better than before.
Oh,
Maybe it's the ego problem.
Thank you, problem. Yeah, I'm getting fatter and fatter.
too much
Yeah.
pressure.
Well, hope so that it won't be more. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. All right. So that's it for today then. Thank you all for joining, and I will talk to you again on Friday.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.